What if the biggest bottleneck to AI isn't chips, data, and power? What if the bottleneck is us? In this clip, Rob explains why the real limits may be prompting, trust, and human judgment.
I wrote an article about this 6 months ago. So there's a lot of conversations about what the bottlenecks to AI are going to be. There's going to be a data bottleneck, a chip bottleneck, a power bottleneck. Like, you hear about what the bottlenecks are. I think there's 3 bottlenecks that matter, and they're none of those. First bottleneck is the prompting bottleneck, which is the original bottleneck, which is if you didn't go in and prompt an AI, it just didn't do anything. So we all had access to this, but we weren't sitting there constantly feeding things in. My point on that is that's going to get solved, and it is getting solved pretty quickly. OpenClaw are these things that are like self-prompting, or we have now a bunch of things that are essentially always prompting AI, or meeting summarizers where it's always listening. The prompting bottleneck is going to get solved because companies want to sell tokens, so they have every incentive to solve the prompting bottleneck. And ultimately, they'll get solved by hardware. Like, this is a terrible device for AI. It is, we are just essentially wedging AI into a form factor that was designed for a completely different world. Eventually we'll figure out the right, whether it's glasses, AirPods, like, I don't know what the form factor will be, but there is a better form factor for AI than what we've got that will solve the prompting. The second one will be trust, which is the challenge with trust is trust gets built up through repeated exposure. Like, it's not one of those things, like if you meet somebody, the harder you try to convince them to trust you, the less they trust you, right? Like, trust gets built up. We're wired to like trust things based on repeated, predictable interactions in ways that produce what we want. That will be another bottleneck, but you should get through that in 5 years or whatever. And at that point, we will just trust AI. Like, we know when we ask it, what's this spot on my leg, that the answer it gives us is probably right. The last one is actually going to be, I think, intelligence. I think eventually we're going to get to a point here where we are going to outrun the kind of specialization that we have, and the last major bottleneck is going to be, we're just not going to know. So one of the thought experiments I give people is, let's say that tomorrow OpenAI or Anthropic released their latest model and it was able to cure cancer. Would if you asked it, give me the cure for cancer, and it gave you something, would you have any idea whether it was right, wrong, what the hell to do with it? I wouldn't. So to some extent, if the models keep getting more capable, the bottleneck just becomes like our individual intelligence. And that's something that takes way longer to develop and adapt, and you will at some point.
The last point is the one I keep thinking about. In the second half of life, we've spent decades building judgment, experience, relationships, and wisdom. AI doesn't replace those gifts. It has the potential to amplify them. I think we've entered one of the greatest opportunities in history for people in the second half of life to amplify and apply everything they've spent decades learning, but only if we're willing to embrace it. Again, what if the bottleneck isn't AI? What if it's us?